I was asking you about your wife. Was anybody checking up on you? I'm asking you.
Not only that, it got worse. She went through her crisis period. She started to get well. Somebody saw her. I took her for a ride somewhere. And then these guys are on the dais saying, he said she was really sick. I saw her the other day and she looked fine to me.
And now the President of the United States endorses you for mayor of the city of Miami.
I'm an immigrant who headed the immigration service. I'm an immigrant who worked at the White House. I'm blessed all the way around. For the president to come out and say, hey, Emilio's my man, you get speechless after a while. I didn't sleep all night.
When most people approach this, particularly politicians, like they treat it as a slogan, they understand there's a benefit to talk about it. Like, what do you see that the rest of us don't see?
For the last 4 years, I think the previous administration was disastrous when it came to immigration policy.
What do you think is the biggest thing at stake?
I will tell you right now, the biggest thing is...
Do you have concerns about gentrification in the area, apartments becoming more expensive than they have been?
I do worry about gentrification. I think we're losing some of our iconic and historic neighborhoods, like in Little Haiti, even in Little Havana. America's a nation that loves immigrants, but they hate immigration. You know, the president is not just looking at international and national things. The president keeps his pulse on what's going on throughout America. And obviously the state of Florida is important to him. Miami is important to him.
Have you already decided who's going to be your city manager?
Maybe there should be a strong mayor, by the way. Welcome to Miami Unveiled. It's not the skylines, it's not the headlines, it's the real Miami, bold, bruised, and burning with dreams. So today is a special civic forum in collaboration, of course, with Politico. It's a chance to slow down, go deeper, and understand one candidate, not just as a public figure, but more importantly, as a human being. And just so folks know, we'll be doing the same thing with Eileen Higgins, who is also running for this position at the beginning of December. So look, Miami's had its moments where the commission feels more like a stage in the governing body, as you know, arguments, theatrics, personal battles, and the candidates who've been chosen in this runoff sent a clear message that people are tired of that. But Miami has also moved through cycles, moments of growth, moments of struggles, and moments of reinvention. And every era has been shaped by different styles of leadership, from Maurice Ferre, who pushed Miami into the modern era, to Manny Diaz, who redefined the urban core, to Javier Suarez, who for a long time people said they didn't have a mayor that they could trust the mayor until he came into office, and to Tomas Regalado, who also left a distinct imprint on the city's identity and direction. And also, I just want to acknowledge, as we look forward to the next chapter, I think it's important to acknowledge outgoing Mayor Francis Suarez, who elevated Miami's national profile, whether people agree with him or not, in technology, innovation, and investment, and brought global attention to what the city has become. So part of the mission of Miami Unveiled is to bring conversations back to a place of respect, substance, and decorum. It's the reason why we started not only the podcast, but why we're doing these public forums. We want to create a civic space where leaders can be examined without hostility, without performative politics, and without all the noise. Miami deserves conversations that are honest, that are human, and that are grounded in reality across politics, business, philanthropy, culture, technology, and every part of this city's life. So for those folks who don't know me, who might be watching this, I'm Fred Menachem, and for sadly, I say for close to 4 decades, because I started in politics when I was like 12, worked across most layers of public life, from national, state, and local politics to international media. I say I'm Forrest Gump, from foreign policy to geopolitics, and somehow ended up in national security circles, to, of course, local not-for-profit work and community leadership here in Miami. I started my career in political fundraising, as most folks know, who got my calls, helping build cross-cultural coalitions long before it was common, including being embraced. So the crazy thing, Emilio, is that as a Jewish kid, I think I was the only one who was embraced by the Cuban community. They couldn't say my last name of Menachem, so they called me Matraca. And I learned politics in Hialeah with a guy named Kuko Karkas.
Wow.
I don't know if that rings a bell. Does that bring back memories? That's
bell.
right, exactly. So I am like, I was, I became a part of the Latino community. But really, at the end of the day, look, I'm fortunate that I've had the opportunity to work in international countries and newsrooms and across, all parts of international and civic life. But the most important thing is that all of us here, I think, believe deeply in showing the human side of our leaders. And one of the reasons that Eugenio and I wanted to create an entity like this, as I said, is when the attacks come, it doesn't matter if it's a politician, if it's a developer, whoever it is, people forget there's a human being behind these leaders. And today, my role, and everybody's going to kind of take a different tact, is simple. I want to explore the human side of leadership, the identity, the pressure, and experience that shape how a person leads when the moment gets difficult. So joining me, of course, is after that long introduction, I know I couldn't help it, is Kimberly Leonard from Politico, of course, and one of the most respected journalists covering Florida politics and nationalist trends shaping the region's future. She's been a journalist for, I don't want to give away your age, so I could say for just a couple
little
days. No, I'm
while.
kidding, a little while. And we're so proud to be partnering with Kimberly and Politico on this endeavor in this forum. So we're happy
you.
about that. So we're glad to have you, Kimberly.
I'm glad to be here.
All right. We'll see what you say at the end of this. And my Miami Unveiled co-creator and partner and friend, Eugenio Robaina, and who 15 years ago arrived in Miami chasing opportunity and found a city that became a turning point, a source of inspiration, and ultimately his home. Now, he doesn't come from politics. He's a global growth operator. He's helped scale companies across Americas, Europe, and Asia to 9-figure revenues, billion-dollar valuations. He's Mexicano. Well, actually, half Cuban and half Mexican, I said, right? No, that's what you're right. Exactly. And he's adopted
Multiple
Miami.
exiles, let's call it.
Exactly. But the great thing about Eugenio is he's bringing, first of all, a younger voice, because I'm old, and a deep business and operational lens into how cities and their shapers truly function beneath the surface. An adopted son of Miami now, he sees the city not just as a market, but a hub for reinvention. So through Miami Unveiled, he's telling the story of the city he's come to love and building a platform that amplifies his voices, shaping the past, present, and future. That was long, I know. Okay, so we're proud to be here. So today, we're joined by Emilio González. And Emilio is a leader whose career has spanned global, national, and local service. 26 years in the United States Army, by the way, thanks for your service.
Thank you.
Diplomatic postings in American embassies, senior leadership roles at Southern Command and National Security Council, among others, and later the responsibility of serving inside Miami's own government, which is probably the hardest of all those jobs. But we'll talk about that later. But I think that there's very few people that bring this combination of experience here in this community. So we're glad to have you tonight, or today, as a chance to move past the headlines and understand who's beneath the resume. So, all right, after that long, you guys are all looking at me. I know I'm long-winded,
No,
but that's
okay.
okay. So we're going to move into like a natural round robin.
Sure.
So Kimberly's going to begin with a political frame. Eugenio's going to follow with operations and business, and then I'll get into some of the human side of conversation. But what did you say? It was like The View? Although I don't want to be called The View. But
Well, just in terms of how we're all, seated
right, we're sitting
around,
here.
and we can
Okay.
take turns asking
All right.
questions, kind of bounce off
Fair
each
enough.
other.
If I shut up. All right, go ahead. Kimberly, start us off.
Yeah, well, you had some really big news happen just a few days ago where
Right.
the president endorsed you.
He did.
I'm wondering, did you seek the endorsement, and what was that conversation like?
I did not speak with the president. In fact, when the president endorsed me, I was sound asleep, interestingly enough. I was, listen, you can't make this stuff up. I had given myself an early evening off. I read before I go to bed. I had laid down. Next thing, my phone blows up. And I was thrilled to death. And mainly, he didn't just endorse me once. He did it twice, because he did it again the following morning. And this was I guess it was a culmination of a series of endorsements that started with the governor and on, both our senators, in fact, Ted Cruz in Texas, who is an old friend of mine. I've known Ted for decades, and he decided that there would be an opportunity for him to tell the Cuban-American community about me, and it just kept going on and on and on, and next thing you know, the president chimes in. So I'm honored. I'm thrilled to death. I have not spoken with the president.
Did you talk to anyone else at the White House, or was there anyone at the White House bending his ear about you?
I've spoken to no one at the White House, but I do know that the president, the president is not just looking at international and national things. The president keeps his pulse on what's going on throughout America. And obviously the state of Florida is important to him. Miami is important to him. So it's a natural that he would know what's going on. He would know the challenges that we have right now. And that he would get involved in this municipal race.
Right. Well, he got very involved in 2024, just in countywide races, and
Right.
saw victories pretty much across the board there.
Right.
We did report at Politico this morning that the DNC now is going to be coming in to help your Democratic opponent in this race. Were you surprised?
Not at all. In fact, I expected it. I think that one of the things that we're seeing now is, even though this is a municipal race, it now has national implications. The DNC has been heavily involved, for example, in the electoral turnout in Virginia, in New Jersey, obviously in New York, in Seattle that just had a mayoral election. So it was just a matter of time before they would just rally the troops and come down to Florida and want to get involved in Florida's flagship city, which is Miami, and get involved in the president's home state, Florida. So there are a lot of factors there that led me to believe I thought they would actually get involved sooner, not now.
Oh, really?
But we're ready for it. We expect it, and quite frankly, it doesn't change the way my campaign is going or how I operate or what I say.
If I could just ask one more on that. So with you having the president's endorsement and a lot of top Republicans in the state, the DNC coming in, this is a nonpartisan job.
It is.
But now there's a lot of partisanship in the mix. How do you feel about that?
This is a nonpartisan job, and I will tell you right up front, since day one, I have turned this into a nonpartisan position. It has been my opponent who has declared herself a true and trusted Democrat in her campaign literature and everything else. I am not making this partisan now. Unfortunately, other people are making it partisan. I've gotten support from my governor, from both my senators, from members of Congress, from the president. They understand. They understand. It is not a partisan race, but it is a partisan race. Everything in Miami is partisan, even when it's not. So I understand that, and I will continue to do my thing and get my message across, and I'm going to win on December the 9th.
Okay, I just want to piggyback just really quickly because as a person, when you heard that Trump endorsed you, right? Forget politics. As a human being, what did that feel like? First Trump endorses you. Then now you're here, 48 hours later, Kimberly broke that story. The DNC is coming on. But as a human being, like, how did that feel? Well, like the gravity of that.
Listen, you can't help but feel honored. When the President of the United States publicly states, "Hey, I'm supporting this person. Emilio's my guy," he lays out, all the virtues as to why he's supporting me. I'm honored. I'm blessed. But again, I think that what Kimberly said, the DNC is involved because the president got involved. And to this day, I mean, it's almost like you got to pinch yourself. Hey, the president knows I'm around. That's great. But you know what? But I'm still the candidate, and I still got to work it, and I'm still got to work it for myself.
But for one moment, really quickly, take all this away. Take the politics, political answers away, and all that. I mean, I get it, but the Cuban kid who came, $254 was it? The ticket? Am I got that right? Am I Rain Man?
Yeah.
Right. So coming from, what was the story? $254?
Yeah. When my parents left Cuba, I was 4 years old, and we actually left on a ship. It was a passenger
61.
ship. And the ship went to Haiti, and it went to Colombia, and then it went to Venezuela, where I had relatives. We stayed in Venezuela for a short period of time. And then we moved to Miami, penniless. My dad had been in the tobacco business in Cuba. All of his business contacts were in Tampa, which then was the tobacco capital of the world, if you recall. And that's where I started my life.
So this is my question before I take all the room and send it over to Eugenio. Take away the politics for a minute. Emilio González, penniless, right? Comes 1961, I think, if that's correct.
Yes, correct.
I'm a Rain Man. Immigrant story. I mean, there's a lot, right? It's not, so, I mean, it's a Miami story. And now the president of the United States endorses you.
Yes, sir.
For mayor of the city of Miami. What does that feel like?
It feels great. It feels wonderful. But you know what? I've been blessed throughout my career. Listen, I'm an immigrant who headed the immigration service. I'm an immigrant who worked at the White House. So I'm blessed all the way around. It doesn't get much better than this. And for the president to come out and say, "Hey, Emilio's my man," you get speechless after a while. When I first found out about it, I would read my phone and I'm like, yeah, sure. Put my phone, and then all of a sudden you realize, to your point, wow, this is huge. This is big. I didn't sleep all night because people kept calling and texting and emailing and everything else. But it is a wonderful feeling.
So anything's possible in this country still, right?
Absolutely. You got to work hard, but you can make it here.
Now, I think he's going to be in Palm Beach for Thanksgiving. Any chance he'll do a quick detour to Miami to help you on the trail?
I don't know, but if I did, I wouldn't tell you.
So now we're going to Eugenio. I know that we took all the air.
It's all right. It's all right. I'll start simple. Like, why now? Why this race? I mean, you've been in it before, national, regional, hyper-local. You stepped out of it, focus on family. I know you've been asked before, but really, without a slogan, it's like, why now? What's motivating you?
Well,
You could be done. You could be enjoying
I
your
could
life in LA.
listen. The thrill of my life right now is going to watch my 7th grade grandson play basketball.
Where does he play
He
basketball?
plays basketball for Belen, and he's a starter.
For all those Columbus people forgetting, you just lost all those votes.
Yeah,
not only is he played for Belen, but the kid is the king of the 3-pointer and an honor roll student.
Oh, wow.
But you know, this started last year, and last year, a group of people started calling me. And if you recall, last year we were going through a lot of lawsuits in the city, and the year before, and my friends and colleagues and business associates would just call me and say, "Hey, you got to run for mayor," and I'm like, "Yeah." And of course, when you're on a cell phone, you really don't have any privacy because whoever's around you can listen. And my wife was listening to the conversation, and she's like, "Are you stupid? Are you kidding? Are these people really your friends?" And it just sort of kept on going, and it finally hit me in early March of this year when I was visiting Tokyo with my business partners. And if you haven't been there recently, it is a city of 15 million people, spectacularly clean, orderly, organized. Cab drivers.
I was in Seoul. I mean, kind of similar in a sense.
Cab drivers wear 3-piece
My
suits and
sister's
white
just
gloves. Okay. And I'm thinking to myself, why can't we have nice things? So I'm talking to my business partners, and I said, I've been thinking about this, and I'm probably going to have to like resign and sell my shares. And they're like, no, stop. We're not going to do this. You're going to stay. You're not going to resign anything. You're going to stay. You're going to run for mayor, and we're going to help you out because obviously your friends, family, and residents see in you what we see in you, and we don't want you to quit. So here I am. So on April the 9th is when I actually filed to run.
What do you think is the biggest thing at stake for Miami right now?
Right now, I will tell you right now, the biggest thing is Miami, the future. I go into neighborhoods. I visited these neighborhoods before as manager, but now when you go campaign, by the way, I've never run for anything in my life. And I want to talk to people about what I think. And the next thing I know is they stop me and tell me what they think. And they tell me in both languages, the city is broken, there's corruption, the residents mean absolutely nothing to the administration writ large, not just an individual. They're being taxed to no end. It's expensive to live here. So that's the message they're giving me. And it turns out that that's actually the message I was going to give them. And that we first of all, we have a credibility crisis. Miami, to many people outside the city, is actually a punchline. It's laughable. I went to a business conference not long ago, and a friend from a competing company, I asked him, "Hey, do you ever do business in Miami?" And the guy stops me and he goes, "Oh no, we made a corporate decision not to do it because Miami's too corrupt."
It's also the hermit crab theory, unfortunately.
Yes.
Which is a very big, I don't know if everybody here knows what the hermit crab theory is, a very big
down.
Miami thing. I think it's in politics in general, but being somebody that's been almost 4 decades in Miami, you see people pulling each other down. It's always one of the reasons why we wanted to start something like this. It's always, you've seen that throughout your career.
Exactly. And listen, I was very active on the campaign last year. I was part of the president's transition team. I could have easily stayed in D.C. I've been there before. I've been confirmed by the Senate before. It's not anything new to me. But I really wanted to come back to Miami. I really did.
There's also the flip side that Miami has definitely seen significant growth. And with growth, a lot of the problems that we have today, from transportation to affordability, but all of that is part of it.
But that's the issue that the people tell me, and that is we have an imbalance in our growth because we've grown so much on the, for lack of a better term, on the brickle side, right? The high rise, the $30 million condos, the fancy new toys, the shiny new jewelry. And then we forget that 5 blocks in is 99% of Miami. And these are the income disparity is huge. Yeah. And I'm telling you this as a conservative, right? Income disparity is huge. People work paycheck to paycheck.
But that's funny. So let me stop you for a minute. I was going to go to another question, but you said something interesting right now. That's the problem in the world we live in. You just said this. I'm saying it as a conservative.
Right.
Who, since when? We're Miami people, right? We're always sort of. Everybody. We could recognize disparity. Miami Republicans were different immigrant community. So I don't think I'm almost giving you a hard time for saying that.
No, but listen,
that's sad that we live in that world. You have to say
there's
that.
an expectation that if you are a conservative, you don't worry about those things. I don't. Right.
Party first.
Yeah. Conservatives don't care about the environment. don't care about clean water. No.
I mean, Carlos Curbelo, look at him, Republican, was very concerned.
These are the things that I see where we have a bloated budget. Bloated. I got to tell you, when I left the city as manager, our budget was $1.5 billion, which was a pretty decent budget. This year's budget is $3 billion. Okay, doubled the budget in 5 years. Where is it? What do the residents, and the residents know this, what do they have to show for it?
Well, I do think, by the way, I was reading all this stuff, and I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to shift for a minute and go back to Kimberly in a second, but I have a quick question. But no, I just want to make sure I'm not making sure I'm keeping the order right. But I did want to shift for a minute, but I did want to say something. Have you thought about, because I was reading a lot about, your ideas about, immediately going and doing audits, but have you ever thought about fraudulent invoices, by the way? I'm dead serious. Do you know hospitals have, you know how many fraudulent invoices are probably coming through the city? That's another thing if you audit those.
Fred, this is all about a deep dive,
Right, but
we should be able to, audit everything. Let's audit our city insurance policy. Let's see where that takes us.
So, Emilio, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want a percentage. If you audit the invoices and you discover there's millions and 20%?
But here's another one for you. The way the residents view their own city now, those fraudulent invoices don't have to be fraudulent. They could be legit. They just give it to a relative or to a friend or to a family member. So there is an angst here. And I will tell you that angst hit its peak when the city tried to cancel the election. Because you have people tell me, we pretty much stomach just about everything from our politicians. But we all come from countries where you don't have elections, or elections don't matter, or elections are stolen. And now we come here and they're telling us we can't vote. They're telling us that they're smarter than we are, that they're going to push the election. And oh, by the way, we're giving ourselves an extra year in office. And that's why I sued. And I tried to tell them, I was the manager. I read the city charter. The city charter is explicit. You can't do this. And they did it anyway. And I had to find a badass law firm.
Yes.
My lead counsel was a member of the Florida Supreme Court. And I took him to court. And we won. And then I thought it was over. And then 3 days later, they appealed. Think about that. A city appealed because we want to vote. How surreal is that? And then the appeals court just ripped them a new one. And then they appealed the appeals court decision. And then they wanted to have an entire appeals court review. Then they wanted to go before the Supreme Court. And at every point, they just kept getting shut down. And in my opinion, because I'm a natural skeptic, there was, people don't know this is inside baseball, but there was a point in the election period, and I don't know, I don't remember the date, maybe it was September 1st or something, that if we had gone past that point without a decision by the court, the city council's or city commission's decision stood.
Yeah.
Okay, so it became painfully evident that they were trying to wait out the clock. Hey, here's an appeal. Here they were appealing stuff that never gets appealed, but they were doing it anyway. And then finally, the courts saw right through it. They expedited everything, and here we are. We're having an election.
So I'm going to shift for a minute, which I like to do.
Shift away.
Before politics, right? Before City Hall, before all the noise of public life, you lived many different lives, right? You were 26 years in the Army.
Yes, sir.
Embassy postings, Southern Command, National Security Council. I can go on and on. But Emilio, and I think this is one of the problems in this community, is that we forget we're human. All of us do, right? Running for office. People see the resume, the titles, the clearances, right? The chain of command. But no resume can ever tell the real story. Every leader has one moment, or maybe several, early in life, long before your public roles, that shaped how they lead. What is your experience, maybe one personally and one professionally, early in your life, early in your career, that still guides how you lead today?
Listen, I've had the privilege of working for first-rate officers as a young officer, and I learned a lot. The military is the ultimate leadership academy because every job you have, you're a leader. And if you fail at that job, they kick you out. You don't get promoted. And I've worked from some spectacular people. I've worked for four-star generals. I've worked for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I've worked for Marine Corps generals. I worked for Army generals. I worked in a cabinet. Mike Chertoff was the Secretary of Homeland Security when I was there. Just a spectacular leader. And they all have their style. But by the way, you can also learn from bad leaders because if somebody's really bad, you can tell yourself, man, I never want to be like that person, ever. And I've had my fair share. But I will tell you that overall, I've had a blast. Life has been good to me. I have no complaints whatsoever.
But Emilio, let's like sit back like as a human. I know you have a lot of empathy. You don't know a good bit about you. What you've had adversity, we all have, right? You've been through difficult times. Your wife, you had to leave. I mean, you know that story,
Right.
you know, and you've had your struggles like all of us. What's that moment that shaped you as a human?
When I became a dad.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Let's see, how old was I? I was a young captain when my first daughter was born, and it changes your perspective. When my second daughter was born, I wasn't even in the U.S. I was serving in El Salvador. And it really changes you. It really does. You know, you're going from this, you know, carefree young Army officer jumping out of planes and doing cool things that you can't tell people about to, hey, now you're a father.
There's more at stake.
Now you got a baby. You got a baby, and I got to take care of that baby. It's huge. It changes. It doesn't change how I view life, but it changes me personally.
But you're a military guy. You compartmentalize emotion, obviously, right? I mean,
do.
I know. Of course you do. That's so good. Nothing, right?
You have to.
But sometimes it's good to, right? We're human beings.
We are. And listen, my joy has being a dad has only been surpassed by my joy being a grandfather. In fact, being a grandfather is better than being a parent. If I could find a way to be a grandfather and not be a parent, hey, let's do it.
How many grandkids?
I only have one grandson.
Okay.
One grandson.
I also wanted to talk about that multi-lens experience to what Fred just said. So, I mean, your career isn't a straight line, and Fred talked about it. You've led in the military and national security. Also, big relation there with immigration, international affairs, aviation and global trade, which has also a dependency there, all the way to the machinery of government. Most people, and I was mentioning this to you before the pod, most people are T-shaped. They have that broad vision, and then they have one area of depth. But you're like more of that M-shaped, kind of like polymath, if you want to call it. So when you look at Miami through that lens, through that multi-lens, that set of glasses, let's call it, national, regional, hyper-local, what does it allow you to see that others can't? That because you have that set of lenses, you look at all the problems and what needs to be done, and you're like, that's going to be my strategic focus.
It gives you a sort of gravitas across the board. So, for example, can I effectively lead a city government of 5,000 employees? Yes, I've done it before. Can I be in a conversation with world leaders to promote my city? Yes, I've done it before. Can I engage international business and financial leaders? Yes, I'm actually doing it now in my real job. So can I engage in state and national political leaders? Of course I can. So what that does is it brings this holistic approach to, you know, being the mayor is not this tunnel vision. You know, I am the mayor, and you know, every other day I'll go play golf. You know, there is actually a business, financial, diplomatic component, national political component. The other thing is you have to recognize that no city, not even New York City, can do things on their own. In fact, their mayor now is supposed to meet with the president now because he's asking him for money.
He wants money? I'm so confused about that. Right, I thought everything was free.
I'm sure.
We don't know that.
But the point
complicated.
is that, you know, yes, we have the ministerial things that you do every day. You pick up the garbage. You have a police department, and you support the fire. All those things, they're pretty much on autopilot. But there are a lot of things that you can't do just with the city budget, and you have to rely on state support. You have to rely on federal support. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to go to Tallahassee and meet with our governor, go to Washington, meet with our senators, go to the White House if I have to. And that's where I say gravitas and experience kicks in. I have a real aversion to people that get elected to high office at a very young age, because I think that at some point you lose a lot. You lose perspective. There's so much more to gain. You know,
How young is very young?
Listen, there are some people that want to get in politics and they're like in their 20s. They've never had a job, right? And their first job is going to be being a state legislator, for example, or running for the state Senate seat. You know, they might be the smartest people in the world, but the experience factor and the contextual factor means a lot. It probably means more than being smart. You know, sometimes I was a Napoleon that once said it's better to be lucky than good, and sometimes I believe that.
There's something to be said right now also about Miami. Is like this specific role is no longer local. It went from local to regional, now global visibility. You have the opportunity to be at Washington. Like, why not Washington? Why Miami? Like, why that decision?
This is my home.
And it's your
this
home,
is my home.
But does it go beyond that?
No,
It's warmer.
No, yeah, that's true. Look,
It is true.
I have had the rare privilege of being the National Director of Immigration. And I was confirmed by the Senate. I've had the rare privilege of working on the president's staff on the National Security Council. I was hired by Condoleezza Rice. So if I went back to Washington, what would I do? What would I do that I haven't done before? It sounds kind of selfish, but I think that at this point in my career, I should be able to bring all of that, to use the word again, all of that gravitas and context to my local community. This is where I live. This is where my daughters live. This is where my grandson lives. This is where I'm going to spend the rest of my life. And I have an opportunity to take all that stuff that we talked about and bring it to bear on my community.
Of course.
Because I'm not going anywhere. I'm here.
Well,
Look, I'm sorry.
Can
go
I?
ahead. Yeah, please.
And you did talk about, and you and I have talked about this before, how you're going to be staying on your current job with
Yes.
the asset management firm.
Yes.
I know it's a part-time job, the job of Miami mayor, but this is one thing that, you know, your opponent talks about a lot in terms of differentiating the way the two of you would approach the role. Why do both? Why, given that Miami is growing so much, how do you, if people are concerned about that, especially given that it was at the very least a distraction with Mayor Suarez?
Well, since you mentioned it, I'll mention it. You know, my opponent doesn't work. Okay, so for her to take this as a full-time job would be a benefit. I enjoy my job. By the way, I am a partner in an asset management company, financial services company. My firm is headquartered in Los Angeles. And because I'm a partner, I can pretty much make my own hours. I work out of my house. I don't have an office here. Sometimes I'm on 3 or 4 phone calls. Sometimes I'm not. So my point is, it invigorates me intellectually. It allows me to continue to promote my city just by being myself. And I've also said, if at some point it becomes too onerous, I'll happily give up my job.
How will you know?
But one of the things that I won't do is continue to pick up additional gigs, right? Because sometimes when you're mayor, they go, oh, look, we want to have you on the masthead. Boom, you get this job. I'm not interested in that. And also, I sit on 2 volunteer commissions by the state of Florida. Okay, I'm on the Treasury Investment Council for the Chief Financial Officer, and I'm on the Defense Support Commission for the Secretary of Commerce. This is me giving back. I don't get paid for that. So I understand your question, but I think it's trying to make something out of nothing, because as long as I fulfill my duties, if I start missing meetings, if I start missing trips, if all of a sudden I can't host a visiting delegation because I've got a job or a work, that's when I'll have to sit back and say, you know what, maybe one's got to give.
Mm-hmm. And are you still with America First Policy Institute?
I am. I'm a senior director there. They call me periodically just to pick my brain on what's happening in the immigration world. What do I think of this? How do I manage that? Yes, I am.
Or you plan on continuing that too?
To this day, it has not interfered with anything that I've done. And again, it's not a full-time job. It isn't even a part-time job. It's kind of like an on-call job, if you will. And it's not even a job. Again, I'm a fellow there, like there are many other fellows. And listen, it also allows me to think. I am a person, I'm an overeducated Army officer. I'm a voracious reader. I'm not one-dimensional. I read 3 books at a time, by the way.
Which 3 are you reading now?
I'm reading a book.
Boom! I was waiting for that one.
Listen,
Sound like David Lawrence.
Listen,
Let's hear it.
I'm reading a book called Leadership Lessons from the Swamp Fox. If you know who the Swamp Fox is.
No. Do you guys?
It's a military book. The Swamp Fox,
okay.
His name is Francis Marion. And during the American Revolutionary War, the British Army in the South was going to go north and destroy George Washington's army. The militia in South Carolina formed up under Francis Marion, who was given a commission as a general in the militia, to harass the British to the point where they couldn't deploy. And as a result, they couldn't go north, they couldn't destroy Washington. And Francis Marion, who's a very little known person anywhere outside of South Carolina, where he's a folk hero, he saved the day. The other one is, I'm reading a biography of Huey Long.
Oh my God, the kingfish, man. Every man a king. One of my, are you kidding? I studied, that's when I used to be a liberal. No, when I studied, oh my God, man. So one of my favorite.
So listen, I went to graduate school in New Orleans. I went to graduate school in
Dr.
Tulane.
Weiss killed him, right?
In Tulane. And in New Orleans.
With my people.
Every kid growing up in Tulane knows who Huey Long is. Just an incredible, his form of populism was America of the 1920s and 30s.
A chicken in every, was a chicken in every hat?
A king is every castle. The guy, first of all, he was just completely corrupt. Okay, but even to this day,
But he took on Standard Oil.
yes, he did. But I'll tell you more. To this day, you talk to the old timers in Louisiana, and they'll tell you they have state highways because of Huey Long. The Louisiana University system exists because of Huey Long. All the bridges over the swamps exist because of Huey Long. An incredible character. And like I said, since I lived in New Orleans and I went to school there, I never really appreciated who he was until I started reading about him. Now, was he probably the person who follows, the Judeo-Christian virtues every day? Absolutely not. But he is a beloved governor. And then lastly, I'm starting a very dense one by a lady named Mary Beard. It's called SPQR. It is the history of the history of the Roman Empire, not the Holy Roman, and how the Roman Empire started, how it expanded, and then the causes of its decline. So listen, I don't like Kindle. I want a book in
What's
my
your
hand.
favorite Miami-Dade public library?
You know what?
There's a really cute one near the Miami Mayoral's office.
No.
Have you been to the one in Coconut Grove?
I have not.
Oh, it's adorable.
I have not.
Try to take my kids.
Oh yeah, they have
I
good
grew up
stories.
in the Kendall Public Library every day.
My main exposure as a manager to libraries was a lady in my neighborhood wanted to put a little library in front of her. You know how the people put libraries
Yeah,
in front of their
free
houses,
library.
little books, and it
We
turned
have one in our neighborhood.
right. Well, it turned out that this lady, no good deed goes unpunished. All of a sudden, she got cited by the people in code compliance because of some regulation that she broke.
Hey, you can please some of the people some of the time.
Yeah, she actually put a little bench there, and I guess the bench was not according to standards.
Wait, so do you buy all your books or do you get them from the?
Oh no, I buy
Library.
them all.
Oh, you buy them?
Oh, I have a personal library that'll fill that wall.
Oh,
Drives my wife crazy. There's books laying out all over my house,
okay.
everywhere.
Love it.
But I will tell you real quick, the lady with the little library, the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution has 27 amendments. The city of Miami has 1,610 ordinances. Okay, they have an ordinance for and against everything. And that's something that I want to do. I'd like to go through our ordinances and find out which ones actually are relevant and which ones aren't, which is going to take a lot of time. You got to have a lot of people sit down there and go one by one. Do we need this? Yes, no, yes, no.
Emilio, I wanted to pivot a bit. We've mentioned the term immigration a couple of times, and I'm sure there might be some more questions here, but one of the most sensitive and polarizing and misunderstood topics today is Homeland Security. I mean, you've actually led USCIS, which is the agency that sits at the front door of anyone coming into this country. And Miami is like one of the world's true gateways, not just for capital and innovation, but also people, families, and entire diasporas like starting over. So when most people approach this, particularly politicians, like they treat it as a slogan, they understand there's a benefit to talk about it. You've lived it, you've led it, you know the nuances within the machinery. Like, what do you see that the rest of us don't see?
Well, listen, for the last 4 years, and this is where I cast blame, I think the previous administration was disastrous when it came to immigration policy. Lawrence of Arabia wrote an autobiography called The 7 Pillars of Wisdom.
Sure.
And I had created a list called The 7 Pillars of Failure for Immigration Policy. It was a diplomatic failure. It was a border failure. It was an economic failure. It was a public health failure. It was a human trafficking. I mean, you could just go on and on and on. This last election was the first time in memory where immigration was the number one issue. I mean, forget pocketbook issues or, the cost of housing. No, it was immigration. Immigration became nationwide. So in that regard, what you're seeing now is, I think, the pendulum went in one direction. Now the pendulum's going in the other direction, and it will right itself. But you do have some serious urban issues with regards to gangs. I've been very clear. Listen, everybody, people want me to get out there and be on the bandwagon and be pro this or against that. I'm always going to advocate for my city. My city is probably the most immigrant-heavy city in the United States. They're going to have an immigrant mayor. Okay, I'm going to be the biggest advocate for my city. I'm going to advocate for my immigrant communities, mainly because I come from one. But I will never, ever advocate for a killer, a rapist, a thug, a murderer, a thief, which is what unfortunately is happening in some of our cities. People are so obsessed with being anti-DHS, or I'm going to stick it to ICE by letting this rapist go instead of turning him over. That's something that's never going to happen here, ever.
I think that, look, we have to protect our borders, clearly. I mean, I think everybody's on board with that now, finally, right? It took a long time for that to happen. But the reality is we have to protect our borders. Of course, we grew up in an immigrant community. I mean, I was like, I lived that experience, growing up in Miami and being in politics. But at the same time, I think, and I'm not saying this is not, you don't not believe this, but my biggest concern is the vilification, right? Because Alex Pinellas, when I was doing my dear friend Pi, he said you have to have a carrot and a stick, right? Mm-hmm. A stick for the people you're talking about, right? Get them out, right? The criminals, but at the same time, for people who've been here, not that we're litigating, asylum bill. That's a whole nother story. Sure. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying my biggest concern is that here in Miami, in some ways, we're safe from vilification. We're all immigrants, but you leave, nationally, and there's been a real, I think, sort of a process where there's a division in creating a situation where there's a message that every immigrant is a criminal and a real vilification and creating immigrants to be dangerous. And that's my concern.
Fred, I used to use this line. It says, America's a nation that loves immigrants, but they hate immigration. Okay, think about that.
Well, it depends. I mean, every party's like shifted on this.
No, but listen. You talk. The same people that will say, "Oh, the border. All these immigrants." Then they'll say, "But my daughter's soccer coach is from Argentina. What a great guy! My cardiologist is from India. Wonderful. He saved my life." So it's that balance of immigration is good. Immigration is great. Immigration is what strengthens the fabric of our country.
It's what made this country.
It is. But what we had over the last 4 years was really not immigration. It was not immigration. And I'll go even further. The people who most suffered during this border crisis were the people standing in line to be legal immigrants. And I'm going to tell you why. Because 100% of everybody that crossed the border, they applied for asylum. Somebody, a real smart person said, "Hey, apply for asylum." In the past, when you were coming in illegally, you made it a point to avoid the Border Patrol. Then somebody said, find a Border Patrol agent, tell them you're applying for asylum. Different set of laws kick in. First of all, asylees don't pay any fees. Okay, they have to be interviewed. A Border Patrol officer does not have the legal standing to decide, you stay, you go. Oh no, you have to be put before the proper legal authorities. So you know what happened? All of these people who were waiting in line, who had done everything right, who had submitted the paperwork, their fees, their fingerprints, their medical records, their law enforcement background checks, they were then told, "Hey, Fred, you know what? You're gonna have to wait 2 more years because we're taking care of this. And all the fees that you paid are now going to be used to do this." And that's why I say it was an incredible disservice to the legal immigrant. And by the way, the dialogue, the narrative changed such where they lumped illegal and legal immigrants all together.
Yeah, look, and I think, let me just say this, because I mean, I've studied your statements and stuff because I go way back when I do research and learn. I know but I do not in an important way, because I want to learn and understand how somebody thinks, right? You've always been a guy that said pretty much the same thing. You haven't waned. You're a bureaucrat in many senses. You weren't George W. Actually supported an asylum bill, like we know, getting into the history. You've always generally said the same thing. And I think what's happening now, and tell me if I'm wrong, whether it's this election or in this country, we're trying to make people, pushing them to such an extreme position. I don't think you have an extreme position, but I also know people who also clearly out there saying that you do. So here's a chance to,
listen, I think that reasonable people need to enter the immigration debate. And when reasonable people don't enter the immigration debate, they leave it wide open for the unreasonable people.
I think that applies to everything.
Say again?
It applies to everything.
Yeah, but in this case, in our community, it's much more visceral. I mean, listen, we all know that, this guy over here has been living in the U.S. for 30 years and he's illegal. We all know that this person over here has a deportation order from another state and they're hiding here. We know it. We see them.
Yeah, of course.
They don't bother anybody. But what happens when they get caught? When they get caught, the law needs to be applied. Here's a perfect example, and this was explained to me by a U.S. senator, actually, a very wise U.S. senator. He says, it's very hard for me to tell my folks back in my home state that illegal immigration is a nuisance because it is a federal law. And if I'm caught being illegal and I'm taken before an immigration judge and the judge says, you got to go, I can't make the argument. And then I appeal it. And the appeals judge says, you got to go. And then you go before, the Office of Immigration Appeals or whatever in Washington, the Justice Department, what is it, EORI office? Oh, anyway. And they say, you got to go. And then you know what? You disappear. So the rhetorical question to me was, how many bites at the apple do you get before a federal court for you to be doing something illegal? Because, hang on, this is what I was told. Because a federal judge is a federal judge. If you don't pay your taxes, if a federal judge says, you know what, Fred, you got to stand on your head. You're going to stand on your head. Okay, so the issue of fairness kicks in, right? Where I have to follow the law, but you don't. Now, unfortunately, the vast majority of these people just want to come here and work and earn a living and raise a family. And I think we should all take that into account. But we are a big country, and you can't have laws for this county, this state, and that state. I will always defend the immigrant community. Now, one more thing.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Yes.
Not only do I have the ability to be heard at the highest levels, and I'm not being flippant there. I have people contact me every week, random people, immigration lawyers. Listen, I have this case, man. You're not going to believe this. Can you help me out? And I'm happy to do so.
I don't. By the way, I know we don't want to make this a referendum on immigration.
No.
I know. Just to be clear, just to be clear for everybody watching this, it's been exaggerated a bit. City of Miami mayor does not have the full, is not responsible for anything having to do with immigration in this community. Let's be realistic.
But I'm involved. But
no, you are. But I wanted to say something. I think, look, I don't think any sane person can say, hey, we don't need to protect our borders. We need, right? And I think also at some point there probably will have to be an asylum bill at some point one day. I mean, that's reality. Mm-hmm. And both parties have failed. There's no doubt about that, right? I mean, and at one point Republicans supported whatever, the history, you were there. But I think the fear is, and then let's move on, because again, we don't want to make this a referendum in immigration. I think the fear is legal immigrants get scared. They're going to be pulled out. Right. And I think you could be clearly, so I think what would make people probably feel very good is if you clearly said that there's not, we're not, the city of Miami's not running around trying to grab everybody out of their house.
Not at all.
And that you certainly would never support something like
by
that.
The way, just as a side note.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, by the way, which I just did.
I stopped.
Sorry.
I stopped going to the Dolphin Mall because of the immigration issue.
Right.
because I would accompany my wife to the Dolphin Mall, and I hate shopping, and I would sit there and read a book on those little benches, and random people would come and just sit right next to me, and they would say, "You're the immigration director, aren't you?" I said, "No, ma'am, I'm not." "But you used to be." "Yes, ma'am, many years ago." "Oh, in Spanish, pero usted sabe."
Te sabe.
"No, yes, ma'am, I know." But and then they tell me their life story. Some person, and they would leave, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm sorry," or contact an attorney. Here's my card, and then somebody else would come, and finally I just said, I can't. First of all, I can't read my book, and secondly, it was too much. So I think I haven't been to the Dolphin Mall in 5 years, 6 years.
Oh, so this has been going on a while before you.
Yeah, this
ran
has
for
been
mayor
going on
then?
long after I left because they recognized me on TV or something. And I don't blame them. Listen, I don't blame them. When I was the immigration director, listen, I could talk about this forever.
But we should talk about other stuff though, because it's not like we have a lot of stuff to talk about at the time.
Okay, if you could address the TPS.
I used to sign TPS.
And then-
okay, TPS is written by
For the
the
Venezuelan and
USCIS
Haitian
director.
communities, especially in Miami, who are,
Listen, I think, listen, I don't have any crystal ball, but I think the Haitians and the Venezuelan community, we're going to find an accommodation. What you have is you have a lot of people a lot of good people that say, hey, the T in TPS is temporary. And why is it that we still have TPS for El Salvador 30 years after we gave it? And El Salvador was ripped apart by Hurricane Mitch. I know, I was there on a rescue mission. Now El Salvador has the strongest economy in Central America. Their foreign direct investment is off the charts. So why are we giving TPS to people? We shouldn't. So I think you have a group of people now that said, hey, let's look at this. Now, in the case of Venezuela, I think there's a contrast there because you have on the one hand the federal government saying, Venezuela is bad, and then on the other hand, we're going to cancel TPS. I do think that they're probably going to come to some sort of an accommodation that will allow us to keep TPS as pure as you can, if you will, and still provide for the safety. By the way, just as an aside, when the war started in Ukraine, I was one of the people, I publicly argued for TPS for Ukrainians because there is a benefit to TPS, but it can be abused. The Biden administration abused it.
So, but as mayor, would you speak out if they didn't make an accommodation?
Well,
for
like I said,
Venezuelans
I
on
would
TPS?
speak out on behalf of all of my residents, my immigrant community at large. Absolutely. And if I needed to go higher, I will. Listen, how can you say no, right? You can't say no. By the way, I was partially raised in Venezuela. I used to spend my summers there.
Oh, wow.
I have Venezuelan cousins. I know the country well. It's a wonderful
And things could
people.
change there very quickly, as we know. There's a lot happening.
They could, but not as much as people think.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to throw something out
wants
here.
to
We
pay
spent a
it?
lot of time in immigration. I
I
never
know.
planned to
It's a
spend
big
this much time in immigration. I really, I think,
okay.
no, because I think it's complicated. I think that in my humble opinion, it's creating such significant divisions, and nobody's right. If they were freaking right, then it would be solved.
Right.
The reality is, Democrats, Republicans, they've all screwed this up. That's the reality. I mean, it's screwed up as much. It's a very difficult scenario.
Yeah, but rarely
So,
do you get someone that has that.
No, of
background.
course. But what I'm saying is right. I just think that it's becoming such a divisive issue that nobody's trying to solve anything at this point.
We came
Most
very,
people.
we came very close at one point.
I know. Trust me. You don't think I. Look, W did some great. I mean, I won't get into that, but
Back end.
I can tell you what happened there.
yeah. Well, we're not now though.
Not
we're
now.
talking about that another time.
That'll be another
Talk
show.
about the May. No, but I'd love. Listen, we could talk. Trust me, we could have a lot to talk about. But I do. You brought up your wife, and I thought there was something interesting because I wanted to. Look. Public life always looks from the outside, right? The hardest moments, and you know this, in leadership happen in silence, right? The nights when criticism hits you at home, when the noise follows you, right? When families are carrying their own battles, and you're trying to hold together everything at once. So people know from the headlines, some people, not everybody, that period at City Hall, right? When it was chaos, circus, you called it, right? They know the social media versions, although it wasn't social media back then, but what they've heard, the commentary. But what they don't know is what that moment felt inside your life, inside your home, inside your family. And I'm going to get into it in a minute, but you were under terrible political pressure. They were throwing accusations at you that weren't true. I mean, proven not to be true. At the same time, your wife was very sick.
Right.
That's a weight most people never see. When you think back to that period, Emilio, And I'm asking you as a human being, forget this political stuff. What did it feel like? Because I'm as a human being. And then I have another question following up. What did that feel like for you? Like deep inside, man, that was pretty painful.
First of all, my leaving the city, I was at peace. My wife was so sick that she was in ICU. She had any number of organ failures. And at the same time that I was caring for my wife, these guys convened a commission meeting to fire me. And one commissioner in particular spent 90 minutes making up these wild stories. I mean, wild. And you reach a point where you go beyond being mad. You're just like, you know what? I don't need this shit. I really don't. And this was like in December. So we went on December break and came back in January. And I thought that I would be able to address the concerns. And then I realized that the circus continued. So I just went to the mayor and said, I'm out of here. I sent him a resignation letter and said, you know what? This is a circus. I'm too old for the circus. And I'm going to stay home. And, knock yourselves out. I'll stay on until you find a replacement, whatever, but I'm not doing this. And by the way, this was never a career change for me. Okay, I was doing it as my civic duty. I am still the only city manager that actually lives in the city of Miami.
But Emilio, I'm asking you, because I know, and I get you, by the way, you compartmentalize, right? We all do it differently. But people need to know the human being, right? Running for mayor here. How did it feel? Like, and listen, I'm not like, I come from the same world. I mean, I've been there. I've been in the middle of this. I've seen part of the reason we're doing this, podcast in general is because I'm sick of, how did that feel? As a person, literally, they're throwing accusations at you. Your wife is sick. And so my first question, how does it feel? And I'll follow up with one thing. You can answer them both. Listen, did anybody check on you? Oh, go ahead.
No, listen, you feel horrible because it's not true. And in my case, I'm an open book. I'm a man of integrity, not because I say so, but all the law enforcement agencies that have given me security clearances say so. And then you see this. But look, there's two parts of this. One are the accusations, which are so stupid as to be funny. And then you have the people that reach out to you privately and say, hey, you know what? You got this. This guy is scum. These people don't know what they're doing. This is Miami at its worst, which, by the way, thinking back, is one of the reasons that really motivated me to run, because that whole entire episode is not over. We still see it. We see it moving forward, just without me, but we see it moving forward.
But my question was, I guess, before, and I think Kimberly was chiming in for a minute, but before I was asking you about your wife. Did anybody, your wife was very sick at the time. Did anybody, I remember those days. I'm old enough to remember that shit. Was anybody checking up on you? I'm asking you, the commissioners, anybody saying?
No, not only that, but it got worse because after she went through her crisis period and she started to get well, somebody saw her. So I took her for a ride somewhere. And then these guys are on the dais saying, well, he said she was really sick, but I saw her the other day and she looked fine to me. And you hear this stuff and you're like, it's like how low could a human being get? And then I realize that I'm much better than that. And by the way, when I left, I kept my powder dry. All the news outlets were wanting to interview me, be on my radio program. No, I'm not doing that. So what happens? 2 years later, over 2 years later, I moved on with my life. The circus continued. It went from 3 rings to 4 rings. And I got a call from an attorney that said, we're going to have this trial and we want you to testify. And I said, I'm not going to openly testify. I'm done with this. So they subpoenaed me. I said, if you're going to subpoena me, but I'm not going to volunteer. And they subpoenaed me. And that's 2.5 years later, I guess, was the first time I ever talked about any of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, ever. And it was on the record. It was a court. I was witness number 1 at this big trial. And after me, maybe a dozen other people testified. But I never commented on any of that because, life's too short to be miserable, to be thinking about these low human beings, these absolute debauched people. Why? I got stuff to do. I got a life to live.
But I guess I want to follow it up before I move on to somebody else, is that I brought that up for a reason, because it's abhorrent when it happens to anybody, right? That behavior of people to treat when somebody's going through an illness and all that, that's what makes me insane in this community. And that's one of the things we're trying to bring back, this kind of decorum. I can't stand it. I think it's bullshit. It needs to stop. And you do too. That's part of the referendum of this election. You talk about all the time. How can you change that so that shit doesn't happen to somebody else, right? So that there's there's humanness within the council chambers, within this community again. How do you bring that back? Because that's, excuse my language, it's bullshit.
So one of the things that I've been very open about is, according to the city charter, the mayor serves as the chair of the commission. And the chair of the commission controls the agenda and the commission. And as mayor, I will serve as chair of the commission. Other mayors have delegated. Christine King is the chairwoman because Mayor Suarez delegated that to her, not because she was elected to that job. And I have every intentions of bringing decorum back.
But titles don't bring it back as a human, as a person. I'm talking about.
And we need, and we need to put markers down. And when people get out of line, you need to call them out of line. And if somebody does something unethical, you fire them. If somebody does something illegal, you arrest them. And that's something that's been missing for a very long time in the city.
How did you go from this place of just wanting to get out of it, remove yourself from the situation, to now jumping in, head first and running for mayor?
As I mentioned, over the last year or so, I kept, first of all, the media kept reporting all the dysfunction going on. This is my city. I live here.
Yeah.
And then people were calling me and saying, look, you got to do this. If you don't do it, so-and-so is going to do it. And if so-and-so does it, they're going to destroy the city. And you got, and this just, it was just a crescendo.
Kept on happening.
It just kept going and going and going. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I kept compartmentalizing it. It's back here somewhere. Mm-hmm. And then you go somewhere, like for me, it was Tokyo, which I hope to go back to. And I'm saying, wow, what a cool place. Why can't we have nice toys? Why is our city the laughing stock? Why is our city underwater? And all of a sudden, my light bulb went on, and I said, I think I can do this. I think I can do this. Interestingly, when I started, I had the lowest name recognition of anybody else, any of the main candidates who was running. They didn't know who I was. They heard about me. They didn't know who I was. And look at where I am now. Because people understand, I'm very focused. I have a message. I'm not deviating my message. I'm not changing it because of you and you. No. This is my message. And I think that my message is enough of a common sense message to attract Republicans, Democrats, independents, Christians, Jews, atheists, whatever you want to call it. But I think it's broad enough so that people understand we can and must be better as a city. We can and better take care of our residents. I love buildings. I love the tax base. I love all the income that they generate. I love the skyline. But it can't be just about that. It has to be about the rest of the city. We need to bring the rest of the city along with us as we become that global city, that progressive city, that economic capital of the hemisphere. Let's bring everybody along with us. Let's not keep pushing people back. And I think that message resonates across the spectrum.
I wanted to pivot a bit and try to understand a little bit more about your operating system. I mean, you've led soldiers in the army, managed bureaucrats in City Hall. So do you have a routine? And what do you take from what? Like, what does your day-to-day look like so you bring your best game to the table every day?
I always surround myself with people smarter than me. And I never hire people for a particular job. I hire skill sets. If I know that you're really good at X, I want you on the team. And maybe I don't have a position for X, but you're going to find your way, and you're going to do great. When you start hiring people based on a job description, this is unless you're like a CPA or something. This is what I need. No, I want this. I want somebody who's a thinker. I also want somebody who doesn't always disagree and doesn't always agree with me. Listen, if my staff agrees with me 100% of the time, one of us is redundant and it's not me, okay? So one of us has to go. So I want people to challenge me. I want people to say, hey, you know what? You screwed up. I have a buddy of mine that has worked with me in the past, and he'll salute the flag in public, and then he'll come into my office and say, man, are you stupid or what? Do you know? And then, we'll have that conversation. But I like constantly being challenged. I also like to read when I'm at work. I like to pull out a book. I like to tell my secretary I need half an hour. I need to clear my mind, and I'll pull out my book.
So is it mostly those macro elements of how do you make yourself better in your team, or you also have that routine that is judicious?
Anytime you're in a leadership position,
like non-negotiables in your day.
In a large organization, everything you do is macro, because when you start being micro, then you're no longer the leader. You're like a staff member. I like to think big pictures. When I was the immigration director, big pictures. Okay, I'm not really interested in this form or that form being filed for this type of immigration benefit. I want to know, why is it that all of our buildings are really ratty looking buildings? How do we fix the backlog? What kind of budget do we really need to give the taxpayer the impression or the view that we're actually doing our jobs? Those are the big issues. And if you talk to anybody who's ever worked for me, this is old school, but even when I was a city manager, by the way, I keep one of those paper, flip chart butcher paper things that you flip over, and I write down all of my issues that I want to do. When I was at the airport, I think I had like 15 of them. When I was at immigration, I had like 12. These are all my wants. And as I go through them, I scratch them out. And I leave them there. And then my staff comes in and says, "Hey, sir, you're down to number 14. What happens then?" I say, "I'm leaving." And I do. I quit. I'm done. Because I've never really been in a situation where I'm there forever. I'm a utility infielder. I became the airport director not because I want to be there forever. I became the airport director because I wanted to grow that airport. And the reason we're no longer a Latin America airport is because I grew that airport. That's why you have all those weird tales there, Qatar, Turkish. I worked at that for 5 years.
There were 100 airlines, trade,
there were 100.
pharma.
Trust me, I remember. Remember, I've been here.
Hey, listen, when I left, we had 109 air carriers.
We only have a few minutes, though.
Go for it.
I'm just going to time, because I'm trying to keep time for him. I can talk all day.
so-
No, please. You guys want to throw anything in there?
But to your point,
But by the way, I was not like so much asking about how you manage the team and set priorities. It was most about like your routine of the day for you to bring the most energy for the day. But it's fine. I think I get in terms of how you think.
Listen, I'm usually not a morning person, but I make myself be a morning person.
I'm with you there.
And I try and be disciplined. Like I say, I like to have meetings, not for the sake of having meetings, but I want to know what's going on. I have found in every position I've had, for example, that people don't talk to each other. So I like to have staff meetings where all the stakeholders are there, because it turns out that the person managing this section is doing something that this person in this section should be interested in, but doesn't know. Okay, I'm death on punctuality. If I call a 2:00 meeting and you're not there at 2:00, the door is locked. Okay, I'm death on.
Oh, geez, I'd be in a lot of trouble there.
If I invite you to a meeting and you send me your deputy because you're too busy, then your deputy should have your job, not you. If I have somebody come to visit me, it better be 15 minutes. During a workday, don't sit there and tell me your life story and, how can I help you? Okay?
Have you already decided who's going to be your city manager?
No,
Why don't you just appoint yourself?
I'm not allowed.
I mean, but there you go. I mean, that would be right. And maybe there should be a strong mayor, by the way.
By the way, when I was the
we
airport
talked about
director, I guess Brian Andrews, a former, he did a story, The Colonel on the Concourse. I hate being behind a desk, even when I was manager. If you're a leader, troops need to know you're a leader. Being stuck in an office all day, I don't know who you are. So I would walk the airport every day, 2 miles, boom, boom. I would go in everywhere. I'd stop in cafeterias. I'd go see the employees at City Hall. I'd get my car. I'd go to police districts. I'd go to a net station. I would show up at anywhere at any time, because one, I want to know what's happening. Two, I want them to know that I like for them to know what's happening. That's how it should be. You can't be hunkered down in your office and pretend like you're in charge of something. You're not. You're in charge of your office at that point. But no, I don't have a city manager. I have about 5 or 6 people that when I get elected, I will sit down. They don't know because I don't want them to know. And listen, being city manager is no fun. I have to tell you, the worst job I've ever had in my life was city manager.
I just want to give you guys a real quick 5-minute warning.
Okay. So whoever takes that job, they have to understand that even under the best of circumstances, the job sucks. But it takes a special person to want to do it, to put in the long hours, to make the tough decisions. And I'm going to pick that person. And one more thing, I know we're at that time, is I'm going to go out into the community and I'm going to go, for all these people that have told me, you need to run, you got to fix this, fine. I'm going to go to them and say, you know what, why don't you put your law practice on hold for 2 years, come work in the city for 2 years. You're an engineer, put your firm on hold, why don't you come work in our engineering department? Why don't you, oh, you're a CPA, why don't you come to our budget office? I want buy-in. We need to invigorate our bureaucracy. And I've done that before, by the way. I used to hire people in the federal government that came from like the Air Force to be part of immigration.
Well, I think we have to talk about how much the city is growing, and you have, and as part of that, we haven't discussed, the library that's going to be coming into the downtown. And I'm just
Yes.
curious, obviously you're very supportive. Do you have concerns about gentrification in the area? Apartments becoming more expensive than they have been.
Absolutely.
And just
listen,
the congestion as well.
And now what you have, in fact, before the city commission today is to like double the size of occupancy in buildings in the middle of residential areas. I feel that personal. There's a huge crane in my backyard. Buildings are going up all over the place. I think we need to take a step back. Like I said, I love progress, but we got to do it right. We have to be smart about it. There should be no reason why we should have a 40-story building in the middle of a residential area. That's just not right. But we need to grow. Listen, if you don't grow, what is it that saying? There's nobody ever coasts down uphill.
No, there's no coasting.
There's no coasting uphill, right?
Either this way or this
Yep.
way.
So yes, I do worry about gentrification. I think we're losing some of our iconic and historic neighborhoods, like in Little Haiti, even in Little Havana. But yes, those are things that I think about and I think we should preserve.
Look, we talked about, in one more thing I wanted to ask, but we talked about the pressure, right? We talked about the past. We talked about a lot of stuff this interview. We talked about trust, responsibility, noise of public life. But leadership is ultimately about what remains, right, when all the noise falls away. 10 years from now, people won't remember every headline or every argument, all the bullshit that happened at City Hall. They're going to remember how the city felt if you get elected under your leadership, what changed, how you refused, Emilio, to let it fall apart, whether they felt seen, whether they felt protected, whether they felt understood, more importantly than what legislation has passed. It's both. I want to end with something forward thinking. When you look 10, 15 years from now, what has to be true in Miami for you to look back and say, was it worth it? What is your legacy? What do you want to leave? And what do you want people to look back and say, what did you bring to this community that really, truly made an impact?
Miami has had 44 mayors. I don't want to be just the next mayor. I want the mayor that in the future can say, wow, that's the guy. That's the guy that brought back our self-respect, our credibility, our good governance, our transparency. That's the guy that helped us create good paying jobs here so that our young people don't have to leave when they graduate from college. That's the guy that was able to offer every resident of the city healthcare eligibility. That's the guy that was able to provide for our children, our working families, and our elder community. That's the guy that tackled the big problems. I'm not here to tackle little problems. Everybody can tackle little problems. I'm here to tackle the big problems. And I'd rather fix one great big problem and be remembered for that than 5 little problems that are forgettable.
Okay, so on that note, last thing, what's the personal part of your legacy? I know you get into the I can't even think of my words right now. But, you get into things that you want to do and accomplish, and that's important. But what's that legacy, Emilio?
I want to live in the best city in the world. I really do. I love Miami. We live not only where people pay to come to, but we live where people literally die trying to get to. And that makes our city very, very special. And I want to make sure that our city stays special. And we have all the assets to be just that city.
And can you be that guy?
I am that guy.
Listen, it's been great. I know we all enjoyed this.
Yes.
It was a lot. We could have squeezed in a lot more. It was a lot to talk about.
Thank you for coming.
No, thank you for having me.
Yes,
This was
thank
fun.
you.
Unfiltered, man. This is it.
Yeah, but this is it, man. I
this-
think these are the kind of conversations we need to have in Miami, really.
this is what you
This
get.
is, for Miami Unveiled, and hopefully we do more with Politico. This is going to be the conversations we want to bring. It's not gotcha. It's not 30-second sound bites. We want to talk about what matters. We want people to listen. We want to bring, the issues, and not just politically, but everything that impacts our community, not-for-profit world. And so we look forward to having you again. But look, thanks for digging deeper with us. I always say Miami's a city that remembers honesty, values humanity, and conversations like this, as I said, they help people understand not just what a leader wants to do, but who they are when the pressure comes. And that's so important. And so on behalf of Kimberly from Politico, Miami Unveiled, Eugenio, and myself, thank you for being part of this moment. To everybody that's watching, look, Miami's changing fast, but the tone and integrity of our civic conversations will determine how this city grows with purpose or just grows louder. Miami Unveiled, as I said, was created to make space for clarity, respect, and real dialogue. We're grateful that you folks have joined us. Good day, good night from Miami Unveiled. We look forward to seeing you soon.